In this video on my series of Chinese steam locomotives, I will discuss two American 280 classes used in China, the KD6 and KD7 class locomotives. The KD6 class is actually a US S160 class 280, and I previously uploaded a video about the class overall. In this video, I will detail the Chinese variants of the class and the later KD7 class. Like I said earlier, the KD6 class is a S160 class engine originally, and over 2,100 of them were built by Alco, Baldwin, and Lima for the U.S. Army Transportation Corps, and they were used all over Europe during World War II. Some were brought back to the U.S. after the war, but several stayed in Europe, some running for another 30 years. An unknown number of them were sent to China after World War II and were eventually classed as the KD6 class by the Chinese. After the arrival to China, the engines were modified with the addition of larger cabs and were given larger, longer smokestacks. Some were more heavily modified, with smoke deflectors and cowlings around the stack, like the JS Class 282s and the QJ Class 210-2s. However, this was a rare thing. It is largely unknown how many of these KD6s were running in China after their arrival and what they were doing for their primary work. However, many were seen in the 1980s by rail fans working in coal mines and industrial short lines in Manchuria. Sadly, they had all been retired by the 1990s and replaced by larger, more powerful engines like the SY class and the JS Class 282. Only one KD6 is known to have been running up until the late 1990s, and that is KD6 487, and it was running in Pingzhehung. There are only two known KD6s that survive today. One is not a KD6 any longer. It was sold to Great Britain and rebuilt to its original look and made to operate again as USATC number 5197. The engine has such a long and interesting history, with it being built in the US, run in Europe for the war effort during World War II, sold to China, modified and used for several years, and then sold back to the UK and converted back to original and to run again. The other KD6 preserved in China is KD6 487. This engine is very unique for China, as it ran for years in industrial work and was eventually sidelined until 2004 as it deteriorated outside in the elements. Amazingly, the engine was sent to Tifa and rebuilt to operate and then used on special trains. China had never done something like this before, as locomotives were seen as just a piece of iron to be used as long as it was useful. Early in 2005, KD6 487 ran again in Tifa and was used several times on special occasions. The engine has now been retired from regular trains and is only run on special trains. When not running, she is at the Mining Museum in Daking. Now on to the KD7 class 280. Like the KD6 class, the KD7s were built by the U.S. and sent to China to help rebuild the country after World War II. They were brand new when they arrived in China in 1946, and 160 KD7s were delivered. Another group were delivered to Belgium as the SNCB NMBS Class 29 locomotives. The KD7 class looked very similar to the KD6 class, but were considerably larger and more powerful. They were a very modern locomotive and were greatly respected and appreciated by the Chinese engine crews. Many design characteristics of the KD7 class were integrated into older locomotives and into new construction engines in the future. The KD7 class was used in mainline freight service in Shanghai and Guangzhou for all of their operating careers in China. The arrival of the larger FD Class 210-2s in China, coming from Russia, caused the KD7s to be relegated to short lines and coal mines for several years. In the 1970s, KD7s were seen by railfans working in Shanghai and Guangzhou, mostly switching at that point. During the 1970s and the 1980s, the class was replaced by the newer, larger JS Class 282s and taken out of service. The last KD7 seen operating was in 1998. Strangely, none were known to have been put in industrial work outside of the areas they'd worked in their entire lives, like the KD6 class were. Strange for such a useful and loved class of locomotive. 4 KD7s are known to have been preserved. KD7 534 is at the Beijing Railway Museum. KD7 587 and 641 are at the Shanghai History and Railway Museum, and KD7 513 is at the Datong Locomotive Works Museum. One more KD7 was seen being restored in Hangzhou in 2002. The KD6 class weighed in at 161,000 pounds and produced 31,492 pounds of tractive effort. The KD7 class were 204,000 pounds and produced 38,000 pounds of tractive effort. Both the KD6 and KD7 classes were built by Alco, Lima, and Baldwin. Thanks for watching this video. All of the visual media used in this production are slides or postcards that I own, and some screen captures from Trainz Simulator. I apologize if I mangled any Chinese words.